Hello everybody, welcome back to the 1.0 Exploration series. We're here, one of the areas that I know a lot of you have been looking forward to. This area probably contains one of the most known changes from 1.0 to post-release. So even though the area is pretty small, I am going to be as thorough as I can be and hopefully do this area justice for y'all. I did already do a video separately for the Astel River if you missed that, so if you want to check that out before or after, feel free. But let's get into it. In the normal release of the game, there's normally a lone ancestor follower wandering around in the swamp, but the enemy is not here in 1.0. Now, if you already know about the contents that we're going to discuss about later, that might not surprise you that much, but this enemy actually drops an immunizing horn charm +1, so it feels like a very conscious choice to put this enemy here in post-release to give you an item that would actually be pretty useful in this area, because I'm pretty sure all the horn charms are in areas where you find ancestor followers in general. But as you can expect, there's no immunizing horn charm +1 since the enemy isn't here and I couldn't find anywhere else. Which unfortunately does mean that I haven't found a single immunizing horn charm, so I have nothing to protect me against the rot further here, other than items. But I do have the model charm, I suppose. The dragonkin here still drops the dragon scale blade, and it's still named the same, but the weapon art is not named the same. It's called a Hellstorm sword instead of Ice Lightning sword, and it still looks the same as well. Definitely looks like it still just buffs it with frost. That's a little bit lightning infused. There is no mushroom crown in this little ruin area, which may not surprise you if you watched the Learna video, because we did discuss how I had a random drop from one of the mushroom enemies and it was this item, though it was named differently. So unfortunately, if you do like this crown and want it in 1.0, you apparently need to farm it from the mushroom enemies instead of having a set pickup. Nearby in this area, there is no Somberstone 8 right here, like there is on post-release. Where you normally find the Nomadic Merchant Cookbook that has some of the rot inflicting items, you'll instead find a Somberstone, the +8 equivalent to it. So I suppose they moved the other one from the area to here, but at the cost of a cookbook, which I don't believe I've found the replacement of yet. Near the hill that has the ladder that takes you up to the ascended platform, there's no scarab, and normally it has a Somber Stone 6. And before reaching the Grand Cloister, there's normally a preserving boluses, and normally it's not an item I'll comment on, but it's the only one you find in this area, I believe. And it's really nice to have it right before you have to go down to the Grace to heal yourself in case you're really close to dying, which you may be. So it's definitely a good idea to add this later on, to have at least one in case of an emergency. Now, making it to the Grand Cloister itself, of course, is a place where you find those enemies. So in this area, instead of having kindred of rot enemies patrolling around and worshipping the scorpion sting or whatever, you have a bunch of ancestor follower enemies, but a variation of them that are cut from the base game in post-release. And you can tell this from all the rot marks all around their body. For these enemies, they seem to share pretty much the same moveset, and that includes even this attack right here, but it seemed like the enemy bugged out and just kept doing it, so I just sat down eventually. I don't really know what the attack does either, so. But they do have one additional attack, a rot breath of some sort, which predictably gives you scarlet rot when it attacks you. The animation it gives gave me the impression that it actually stun locks you, so I tried it again later on and it actually does. You can't roll out of it once you get hit by it, which is maybe a little cheap, but the attack itself is not super hard to see coming and roll away from it. But here we have another variant of an enemy, this time the shaman enemies. Firstly, you can hear the singing that it does, which is identical to the Shifa River, as we discussed before, the really funny one, not the one in the post-release. This one also has a lot of rot markings and such to be able to tell a different enemy. And secondly, the moveset is entirely the same, but all their melee attacks when they connect will cause some scarlet rot buildup. So in reality, there are two enemies that are cut from the post-release version of the game that we can find here in 1.0. I'm sure the main reason a lot of you know about it is from Zuli's video, so here they are in all their glory. There are still a few more changes that I think are really interesting that are coming up shortly though. The Scorpion Stinger as the quick step Escher wore instead of the repeating thrust. And also when I opened it up, it says that it causes poison buildup, but after actually testing it, it doesn't seem to cause either poison or scarlet rot, which is definitely disappointing. That's, one of the unique aspects of this weapon, and one of the few that give scarlet rot buildup. And given that it's a dagger, it's actually pretty decent at applying it pretty fast. The Putrid Tree Spirit that is normally an ambush in release actually is just outside in the map already, but it still drops the golden seed and stuff. Alright, so actually making our way down to Astel. Just a warning, I got bombarded by like 3 different changes immediately as I enter the room, so we're gonna take it slow. As soon as I enter the fight, I noticed that the name of the boss is Misbegotten of the Void instead of Natural Born of the Void. it immediately started casting the meteor attack, and the meteors themselves were more of a red-orange instead of purple like they normally are in post-release. This is all whenever it's supposed to open with the laser attack. And it's playing the Urge Tree Nights song instead of its own proper soundtrack, so I assume it wasn't ready, or it wasn't picked out to be specifically this boss yet. So yes, this whole first 10 seconds of the fight really threw me off and had me scattering to write notes. After doing the fight proper for a little while, I noticed that it has an attack that has it sort of teleporting in place, but not to do that one grab attack, it's simply to do like a melee attack. It's really strange and it almost seems really buggy. Definitely cut this later because I haven't seen this ever, but yeah, it's very strange. The particle effects on some of the attacks is a little bit different, some of the magic attacks, but not by much. It's just something that I thought was a little bit different. And one of the most obnoxious changes I noticed during the fight, that I couldn't even figure out what was happening at first, is that I noticed that sometimes my jumps were nerfed in terms of the distance I could travel. Like sometimes I wanted to do a jump attack, but I couldn't travel as far. And I eventually noticed it's because of the water. The water actually gives you like the heavy roll running animation, even though I'm not actually fat rolling. And it doesn't give you the fat roll either. It's just whenever you run and then when you jump, it gives you the cut jump distance, like if you're just jumping in place or something. I definitely hated that. And like I said, it took me a bit to figure out what was going on, but that's something that happens in this arena. And definitely not in post-release. Now when I actually killed it, it gave me the Remembrance of the Misbegotten. Which I should remind you, the Misbegottens are called aberrations in 1.0. So I guess in a sense this doesn't conflict with other enemies. But it certainly makes me wonder what the other Astel is going to be called if it's still there. All that said though, the trophy name was actually accurate. It's still the Natural Born of the Void. Which I get the impression that trophies are more based on stuff that's closer to release, like maybe they were planned out later. And could even explain why some are buggy, like the armaments one, those kind of infamously bugged and such. The name of the grace itself is also called Misbegotten of the Void. And when I checked the things you get from the Remembrance, I noticed that Waves of Darkness is called Storms of Darkness in 1.0. And also that the Bastard Star seems the same. I don't have the stats to wield it. But Dash of War is called Starcloud instead of Nebula. And I did notice as well that it seemed to be faith-based instead of intelligence, which is very strange, that's for sure. And of course, that'll be all for the video. But next time we'll be looking at the Moonlight Altar and the Inverted Carrion Study Hall. I hope you all enjoyed the video regardless of how short it was. This area is definitely really small, and I could have bunched it together with Aincel, but I didn't want any changes in Aincel to not be overshadowed by like a rod itself. So I just started to break these two up even though I knew they're probably going to be small individually. And I suspect something similar will happen for the Moonlight Altar and such as well, but maybe I need that because after that we'll likely be going to Altus Plateau, which even if I exclude Mount Gilmer and Leyndell, which I probably will, is a huge area, so that'll certainly be a lot of work. And I have heard that I think Leyndell is also pretty different, so I actually haven't seen those changes, whatever they might be. Surprisingly, I think I actually have played through 1.0 Leyndell, but I don't remember anything, so maybe I haven't, I don't know. Yeah, that's something to look forward to. Of course, all of this, including Moonlight Altar, will probably be next year. At this point, if I released it as I planned, there's no time to put out another video. But I have gone ahead on Moonlight Altar, so I could get it done within reason, which I may do. But if you notice, I do like to kind of switch it up in between 1.0 videos as well, so we'll see what I would like to do. Anyway, we still got lots of ways to go for 1.0. As I mentioned, we have Leyndell, Mount Gilmer, the Altus in general. Then from that, we got the Mountaintop of the Giants, Far Missoula. We're not even totally underground. We got the Deep-Root Depths, the Shunning Grounds, Michaelis Halleck Tree, and I guess just the Consecrated Snow Fields. Yeah, I might divide some of those bigger areas into parts, but I predict at least 10 videos or more before we're done completely. And hopefully I can get all that done before DLC is released or at least announced. It would be nice just to be able to plan out content for that separately. But because of so much work that is left over, I would certainly appreciate anyone who would like to become a member to support me on this journey and with other projects I have for videos and such. So yeah, just in general, do consider subscribing. This is the 7th part of the series. And as mentioned, I project at least 10 more. So there's plenty of stuff to look forward to. So I do hope to see you again for the next few parts. But yeah, that'll be all. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you around. Bye bye.